welcome to the Stories That Sparkle podcast. I'm Hella Rader, and boy, y'all, I am super excited for today's episode. There's a couple of things you need to know, especially if you're new here. Number one, this is the 50th episode of the Stories That Sparkle podcast. Woohoo! So exciting. Also, this is the first in a 4-part series. This episode is called Becoming the Proof. 4 women who built the thing they needed to ensure it exists for others when they need it. Yeah. So I did not intend to make a series. This happened, quote unquote, accidentally or unintentionally. And if you want to read all about the backstory of that, you can go to my Substack, hellarader.substack.com, and read this week's Tuesday tidings called Becoming the Proof. I'm really excited to kick it off with my conversation with Georgia Clark. She's a 8-time published novelist. She works mostly in queer romantic comedy. She's also the creator of Generation Women, which was the main reason I wanted to talk to her, is to talk to her about that. It's a monthly intergenerational storytelling event at Joe's Pub in New York City, where women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s plus take the stage to tell a true personal story. We get into the whole thing in this conversation. And the other amazing thing about Georgia is that she's also runs a writing mentorship program called My Novel Year, through which she helps writers who are either trying to write their first draft or revise a first draft spend a year in a cohort to really work their craft. So yeah, I mean, it's just an incredible conversation, and it took us into some really wonderful places, and it was really helpful to me. And the thing that really stuck out to me that I simply could not let go of ever since having this conversation was the moment when she said, "We make brave choices when we see other people making them." Yeah. The whole thing. It's just amazing. And we talk a lot about that from her perspective, her experience with that, and why she does so many of the things that she does. It's incredible. And I'm so excited for you to hear all that she has to say. And yeah, to really kick this series off with this amazing conversation with this amazing woman. So I invite you to get comfortable, sit back, and listen in. For the woman who feels all alone in it, whatever it is for her right now, the Stories That Sparkle podcast is a series of long-form, intimate conversations with women you have never heard of and could easily pass on the street, in which they share the often messy truth about navigating grief, starting over, reclaiming their voices, inhabiting their bodies, and building community. Welcome to our Disco Ball, the Stories That Sparkle. Well, hi, Georgia. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Hella. Nice to meet you too.
Welcome to the Stories That Sparkle. It's very exciting to have you here.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay. I came across what you're up to with Generation Women through a friend of mine here in New York. And she told me about having attended and what a great experience it was. So I was like, I must immediately look this woman up and talk to her. So yeah, because I was like, this is like perfectly in line with what I'm trying to do, which is get more women's stories out there of all kinds and ages. So it was very exciting. I have yet to go to an actual event. So that's my next item on the to-do list, is to attend the next one. So
you must. You will love it.
I'm sure. Because the other thing she mentioned was that, you run a pretty tight ship in terms of it's not a super, super long event, which I think is wonderful.
That's right. I mean, we all have places to go, people to see, and I'm a fan of a short, well-produced, tight, hour 20 long experience, and that's what we get at Joe's Pub.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fantastic. So I'm excited to come see it sometime. So tell me, let's start there. When you started Generation Women, the storytelling event in 2017, correct?
That's right. 2017, I had been having conversations with my mother, Jane, shout out to Jane, about the experience of disappearing as an older woman. And she shared with me that the older she got, the more she felt like people were looking right through her, and that she was essentially being erased from society, which really angered me and made me feel, mad and sad because Jane is rad. And I did not mean for that to rhyme, but so glad that it did. And as I was putting together the concept in my mind, I also felt like I didn't just want to be in a room full of millennials. I'm a millennial. I love millennials. No shade to millennials, but I I'm an immigrant to New York City. I'm from Australia and I don't have any family here. So most of my social circles and the people I was spending time with were close to my age. And I wanted to spend time with people who were older than me and younger than me. And so the idea of the show came out of those twin desires to elevate the stories of older women specifically, but also to create room for intergenerational connection. So at the show, every month we invite a woman or non-binary performer in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s plus to tell a story on a different theme, a true story, a personal story. And what you'll sort of see on stage is the cycle of life unfolding because we start with teen 20s and what matters to them, what their concerns are, what their, rock bottom moments have been, all the way through to 70s plus. And last show, we had someone in their 90s on our set. We've definitely had performers in their 90s and many performers in their 80s, and to see how like what the concerns are, what the life story is for each of these generations in conversation with each other and supporting each other becomes this really profound and beautiful and entertaining experience.
Wow, that is fantastic. That's what really stood out to me the most when she was describing it to me was this intergenerational exchange essentially happening via storytelling. It's really fantastic.
It's really interesting, and it's interesting in the ways in which how much things have changed for women over the years. We have women in their, 60s and 70s telling stories about truly like I think what would be an unrecognizable time for someone in their 20s, like what the norms were, when the only acceptable careers were being a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher, and that really wasn't that long ago. Uh, but then on the flip side, what experiences feel the same and feel similar and feel like the same sort of stories, and that I think is elements of the human story, the human condition, and the themes that we really like to program stories around, and that I like know that our audience like are themes around resilience and around perseverance, around hitting rock bottom and getting back up. Because that is something that happens to all of us. We all have our rock bottom moments. We all reinvent ourselves. We all have second, third, fourth chapters, and those become, I think, even more meaningful and high stakes sort of the older you get, it feels like it's all but part of the course that you would change your mind and change your career in your 20s and you're just figuring yourself out. But I think it takes a lot more guts to do it in your 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s to try new things. We've had performers talking about becoming stand-up comedians in their 60s or falling in love in their 90s or,
Wow.
just really going against the grain of what's expected of them and what feels permissible for society. And I really love to showcase the fact that there is no age limit on excellence, on wit, on bravery, on reinvention. These things can and will happen if you want. They're available for you your entire life, not just something that is the playground of the young or for youth.
Right, right. Yeah, it's fascinating because this has been very front and center for me recently because I started over like 2 years ago. Really, I would say it started at 6 years ago when I got divorced. And so it's like now, who am I now? Like what's happening? And what do I want to do with this life now, that has been going in one direction, and now that's completely rearranged. So yeah, so building, starting over, and then 2 years ago starting over in career, which is a whole other thing in your late 40s, early 50s. It's just, quote, not done, or not smart, or not the safe choice. And I'm like, well, some of it wasn't entirely up to me, and some of it just I couldn't not do it. Was
Yeah.
sort of like, I can't keep living not myself, basically. But that thing of, um, we're also very different, and yet there are these threads that are very much the same, even
Hmm.
across age groups.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just been really fascinating, even in doing this podcast, to hear women from all kinds of different places basically saying very similar things at the end of the day, if you dig down below. So,
Yes, yeah. And it's wonderful that you have this platform for people because I feel like we can make choices, the hard choices and decisions, and we can be brave in our life if we see other people doing it. Of course, many times, we might be doing something that we've never seen anyone else do, and that is incredibly brave. But I think, even when I was in my 20s, one of my friends moved to Paris from Australia and was just like, I'm going to go live in Paris for a while. And it just really rocked my world. I was like, what?
what?
Like, we can just do that? And I think that that kind of happens writ large and over things that feel even more difficult than, well, moving overseas wasn't a walk in the park, but uh, knowing that other people have done things, have made these big choices, have changed careers late in life, have done the thing that scares them the most, can make us feel that we can do that too. And so
Right, right.
that's what I think one of the other reasons why the show is so powerful. We also explicitly program stories, and I develop every story intensely with the performers. There's a pitch process, a developmental edit, a line edit. It's not just rock up and show us and tell us a
Oh,
story,
okay. Yeah.
which
All right.
does set us apart from other storytelling nights because there is more of an intensive editorial intake and process. But we develop the stories that our audiences want to hear, which are stories that have an empowering, uplifting, and hopeful message. And that have some kind of actionable takeaway for the audience as well. It's not just a series of personal success stories, which is essentially a story which is like, and everything worked out great for me.
Right.
It's like, what is the takeaway? What, like, if we dig down into what is this story a fable about? What is it a metaphor for? Like, what? And I think that kind of gift is really important and profound for an audience. I feel like every show people walk away having heard something they needed to hear.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's interesting you say that specifically, because that's how I always feel when I have any conversation. Like, I have just heard something that I want to take away, from that I'm going to take away from this conversation, but every time I listen to someone else talk about their experience, and what they did to get from A to Z, or by way of E, I come away with something like, oh, I didn't know that I needed to hear that. Like, that gives me a new idea, or hope, or momentum to keep going, because it's so easy to get stuck. So I love that and I'm sure your life as a writer, and published author and novelist clearly comes into play here in terms of crafting story, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it does, definitely. I'm an eight-time published novelist. I work mostly in queer romantic comedy. But they are different skill sets. Fiction writing, non-fiction writing have different forms and norms and audience expectations. I mean, there are similarities in that they're both a form of story.
Right.
But like they are, as I move between, because I do both and I teach both, and so I am always aware of the nuances in the forms as well. But it is very fun to be able to straddle both worlds. The world of the novelist is much more someone who is tucked away for a few years, bashing away at their keyboard. inside of a very elaborate story world that only they are the sole
Right.
mayor, sheriff, god of, with very few other people versus something like Gen Women, which is monthly, has like a much quick, like it's public, it's a performance, it is much shorter forms, and it's very collaborative and a social experience. So for me, the balance is really works for me.
Yeah. Well, I relate to that because I mean, I spent 2 years or a year and a half working on a memoir, so
Right.
nonfiction writing. But just, yeah, that act of writing is very solitary and
Hmm.
you're by yourself with your thoughts and your computer and your stories and your sticky notes that I have everywhere I go. And then, but I was like, I'm also this very social person. So I needed or wanted another way to be with people. So I love that. I totally get the like straddling those two things, and they're very different, and yet they kind of work together and inform each other.
That's
So
right.
yeah, that's wonderful. Because part of what you do also is you teach people or help people with their writing and take them through a first or could be a first draft of their novel, right?
That's
My
right.
novel year, right, is what
That's
you
right.
is your program. Hmm.
I have two year-long tracks, both called My Novel Year, and then the draft and the revision. And quite simply, one takes you from nothing at all to a first draft, and one takes you from a draft to a hopefully polished, submittable, ready to go manuscript. You know, books can go through many revisions. But the idea is that the program is a high touch 12-month experience in a small group of writers for all of whom are working cross genre. There's no particular, you don't have to be working on any kind of genre to do the program. And you get 12 sessions, 12 one-on-one sessions with me throughout the year, 12 group sessions. At the end of both of the programs, you pitch to my acquiring editor at Penguin Random House, Emma Caruso, and my literary agent, Alison Hunter, from Trellis Literary. And as well as having Q&As with published authors throughout the years, different masterclasses. It is designed to be everything I wish that I had coming up, and it includes a full developmental edit of your manuscript across both tracks. And so because what I was realizing as a novelist is MFAs exist and they are expensive, time consuming, and mostly geared towards literary fiction. I'm more familiar with, commercial fiction, book club fiction, upmarket fiction. That's more what I read and what I know. And there aren't as many formal programs. There are, but there aren't as many formal programs for writers who want to invest in themselves, learn craft, get industry access, form a writers community, have accountability outside of the MFA. So that's why I created my novel year. It is I have limited capacity, so we only run a few cohorts a year, but the applications for the summer program open June 1st, so they should be open right now. And close mid-month, mid-June. So if you are a novelist who wants to write a draft, or you have a messy first, second, third, fourth draft and want to do a proper revision, and come out the other side with a transformed book, this might be a program for you.
Yeah, no, that is so important because I mean, I wrote my first draft in a cohort, and it was so helpful to have the accountability, the support, because it is such a lonely thing, and it's really easy to get stuck in the head or not do it or wander way off course somewhere and just yeah, and yeah. So it was really helpful to have the support of a community along the way, and then like real guidance because I'd never written anything. I mean, I've written things, but never like a cohesive like has an arc, start and finish, all of that. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm just writing stuff. So
Yeah,
to
no.
have the help to put it into a container and then also to have that developmental edit was is huge. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I know that hiring a developmental editor early in my career was what got me my first big book deal at Simon and Schuster, because the draft that I gave her was not in any way close to the draft that I submitted and got a good book deal out of, and that started my publishing career. And what I found and what I now offer is not just a transformative edit for the book, but really learning how writing works. And there's a lot of education that goes into these letters as well. 15 plus pages. It's going over structure and character and pacing and theme and tone and marketability and positioning and with like specific suggestions of how to execute notes. And I just remember feeling like my head had been cracked open when I was reading my first few letters, and every letter since. I've received many developmental edits over the course of publishing 8 books, and so I think that also helps me deliver notes in a way that is sensitive to writers
Mm.
and that will help them sort of like feel energized about an edit, because if you've ever gotten any feedback on your writing, you know that it can be exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. There can be some resistance, some defensiveness. So I feel like I strike a good balance there with being able to offer suggestions that are actionable and helpful and encouraging, as well as, often suggesting major overhauls.
Right. So what was your personal journey with even starting to like how did that begin for you to be like, I'm going to write a novel? Or was it just I'm writing and it ended up becoming a novel? Or what was that process for that journey for you? Like how did that begin?
Yeah, I wrote my first young adult novel. I wrote 2 young adult novels early in my career. The first in Australia in my late 20s, and I was trying to be a filmmaker and a TV writer back in the day, and so I didn't really. It was a very simple book. Australia is a much smaller country with a different publishing industry. I didn't have an agent. I just dealt directly with the publisher. And I wrote a book called She's with the Band that was based off the experience of me being in a band in my late 20s, because I worked in the music industry. I was the editor of a weekly music magazine. Lots of, the characters were teenagers, but it was a sort of based on my band that I was in briefly, the dynamics within the band. And but I didn't see that as being like the first step in a publishing career until I moved to America a couple of years later. And my plan was to write a screenplay. And then I got to the US and realized, A, there were a lot of people writing screenplays, and I had literally no connections in the industry at all, and that maybe I would be better off writing another book because I'd already written one, which, as soon as you
Hmm.
have any momentum in any kind of creative practice, like that, there's like you're up one step of the ladder.
Oh, that's a
And
huge piece. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right. Like follow the energy, like where the creative flow is happening, like it's happening in writing these books versus switching gears over here to screenplay or something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I also had the realization that I wanted to write stories, like big, elaborate world building stories, and that they didn't have to be films or TV shows. I mean, of course, I
Hmm.
would still love to work in screen, but which was really a profound insight as well, because sometimes we're so doggedly pursuing a goal, we might have blinders on as to what the goal must be. But if you sort of take them off or just sort of think, well, what do I actually really want out of this experience? There might be a few other ways in there to scratch that itch. And for me,
Yeah.
that was like, oh, well, maybe I can still world build and write these stories in the novel form. And actually, I don't need to fundraise. I don't need to talk a cast and crew into helping me, because I've made a few short films in Australia and they had been great experiences, but incredibly intensive as far as logistics go, money goes. And and so I started down the path of being a novelist. I wrote a another YA middle grade book that didn't sell but got me an agent. And then I wrote another young adult action adventure story called Parched, which did sell, but for a very small amount of money. And then I had my come to Jesus moment where I was like 33 or maybe in my early 30s and just thought, I can't, this isn't sustainable financially, practically, emotionally. And so that's when I decided to hire a developmental editor. And for 2 rounds of edits on a submission, I decided to work in adult fiction, which I just felt was closer to my voice and truer to my interests. And I just took it more seriously.
Mm.
I was working nights and weekends at a writer's room. I was reading my genre. I was educating myself more. And then when the edits came back, I realized that was like the missing piece is I had all of the enthusiasm but I just did not have enough basic craft. And so applying her edits, Sarah Cipher, a wonderful still dev editor and friend today. And then when we sold that book, that kind of launched my career. And I did another, how many? One, two, three, 4 books with Simon and Schuster, and now I'm with Penguin Random House. So my 8th book is
Wow.
coming out in a couple weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's June 16th. The book comes out. Play it again,
Play it
right?
again. Yeah, that's
Ah,
right.
and you're doing a combination with Generation Women for the book launch, right?
That's right. On June 16th at Joe's Pub, we're doing it'll be a typical Generation Women show. So you'll see 6 wonderful stories on stage on the theme of play. And everyone in the audience will get a copy of the book. I'll do a short reading. So it'll just be like a combo show book launch event with some of my favorite storytellers and some fun surprises. So if you're in New York City, come and see us live or grab a ticket to the live stream. Every show is live streamed as well.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love this. You have like, your two big worlds and loves are coming together in one night. Not, I'm sure they have before, but this just sounds very exciting. And I love, like, I heard in there, that whole taking the blinders off.
Mm,
And not being so determined that it has to look this way. That's
mhm.
something that I've been recently a bit, and I don't know if I'm struggling with it, but like, I want to shake my fists in the air and be like, what else do you want me to do, universe or whatever? And I'm like, well, maybe I need to just take the blinders off and expand my vision to another way. Which
Yeah,
which has
yeah.
been the funny thing is that's been a theme of mine for the past year is what if there's another way, but I forget. Like it's easy to forget when you're in the weeds or in the day to day of getting things done. It's easy to forget that. And you like set a course and you're like, it has to be like this. But
Yeah, I think it's a good practice to, especially if you are like a type A overachiever, like eldest daughter energy, like Virgo, whatever it is, like, we can be quite dogged in our pursuits and that kind of ambition and direction can be very helpful, motivating. But just to have those moments of, and look, I'm saying this to you as much as I'm saying it to myself, of being able to take a break, take a breath and to really think like what do I want my life to look like, what's important to me, this thing that I want more than anything else, is there another way in? Sometimes I work with a lot of writers through my novel year. I work as a coach as well. Uh, and I do a lot of editing. And writers are very focused on getting an agent, getting a book deal. And I always like to talk about self-publishing because that is another way in which you can get your books published. It is also like it can be a backdoor way into a book deal. Plenty of authors get acquired from having success in self-publishing and get book deals out of them. But just to sort of, like, what do you really want out of this experience? Because a lot of the times I think what people want is approval or from like an authority, which is like an agent editor. But then, how important is that really? And it is just one person. Publishing is brutal. It's a difficult industry to like get into and stay in, and like I like to bring people back to the joy of writing, and that is like meaningful, like actually being able to create art, create stories, regardless of where they go and what people say about them, and certainly how much money you make out of it. Like if you want to make money, just don't try and write a book. It's probably going to cost you money at first. Um, but like I think being able to stay connected and aware of the pleasure and privilege of actually creating writing is important as well.
Right. Ooh, I love that. The pleasure of creating. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that, I've been able to sort of get back to is like, oh, I've gotten the benefit of having written this story. Like I've gotten back parts of myself in just doing it and seeing it through and telling that story, whether it ever goes out here into the world or not, is almost now somewhat immaterial. But I also can relate to but I want someone to give the stamp that says, this is good. You did well, So I'm like, oh, these two competing things that happen in the creative system somehow that are both true at the same time and yet are at odds with each other can pull you
Yeah.
in a lot of different directions. Yeah.
Yeah, integrating the like never-ending desire for the gold star, like the A plus. Like I still have visceral memories of getting it as a child, and it like I think in some ways imprints like a gold star on our brain, and we just consistently chasing that approval. But in publishing in particular, like no one will ever give you that gold star. You'll never, like that. In some ways, that is just an illusion. And I, know plenty of writers who, after getting into book deals, like realize like this is more complicated than I thought it was. And I feel like for me, I had a profound shift as far as my relationship to success and ambition. And it sounds like a terrible cliche, and I'm sure like it's an eye roll. But after I became a parent,
Mm.
I was very anxious about becoming a parent. My wife wanted kids. I didn't really, to be frank, and or I just was really unsure about the experience and what it would mean for my life as an artist. And I felt very nervous about it. My own mother really struggled with having young kids and told me all about that. And so I was panicked by the time it was coming up to having our first kid, and then actually found for me it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's really challenging and really hard, and you have like another 3 million full-time jobs you give yourself, it feels like. But just getting out of my own head and realizing that the world, like my world, wasn't gonna live or die on my creative like output and successes, and that there was something else that I was building that perhaps could be even more meaningful and grounding and permanent than that, which is a family. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, becoming a parent of now two girls and sort of like playing that role in their life, and the sweetness of family life has been really helpful for me as an artist, and has I thought that becoming a parent would take away my artistic identity, but instead, conversely, I found that it supported it,
Oh,
and
wow.
and in some ways even superseded it, or at least became on par with it, in a way that was very healthy for me.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, like having that balance in life and whether and that again it reminds me of the importance of community between whether it be family and or larger than that, but just that sort of that container of love and support both ways. I've never been a parent, so I don't have a direct experience of that, but I find myself with a lot of my friends' kids being like a honorary auntie, and so I have those moments with them at family dinner time, and making cake pops, and all kinds of,
Yeah.
and everything in between, going to the play, and all of the things in between. So I'm like, oh right, this is like these moments of being together in person with people you love, really is what actually matters, at the
Yeah,
end of the day, yeah.
that's right. Yeah. I think whatever it is, if, friends, family, community, but like one of the ways I think that artists, if you are like struggling with like writer's block or like, today's existential crisis, like reaching out to other people, like, going for a walk, going and seeing a movie, like just sort of getting out of the storm in the head, which I know very well. And when I teach, like I'm a craft-based teacher, and I talk a lot about writing principles, and we talk a lot, of course, about writing in the pages, but we almost spend not as much time, but a significant amount of time talking about the mental side of things,
Mm,
and creating good mental practices. Because I think the number one thing that gets in writers' way isn't actually the industry or like a lack of time or anything. Like being a bad manager of oneself. Because as a creative or any artist, you are the talent and the manager. You are the one who is in the seat creating. It's your ideas, your inspiration, your vision, but you are also the manager of you. You create the working conditions for the talent. You are the one that sort of sets up whether it's probably going to be a good day or a bad day. And so a lot of writers have bad managers in that they are telling themselves things like, "You're never going to be published. This is never going to work. Who do you think you are? She's doing it so much better than you." And like, what do you have to say? And this is just a bad manager. We would never work with a manager like this. So if you have a manager like that, you must fire that manager immediately and work with someone who can set good boundaries, has a positive attitude, is able to like, stop the spiral. Otherwise, the whole process is going to be miserable, and you can talk yourself out of creating great work before you've even had a chance.
right, right. Yeah, no, I've often said recently, I've hit this kind of wall with that. Like, I'm much tougher boss on me than anyone I've ever worked for, that I was always complaining about being such a, whatever boss. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not being a very nice boss to you,
That's right. That's
to
exactly what I'm
yourself.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's an area to really focus in on, because you're the boss of you. And so you get to choose how you want to show up, and like, maybe don't be so hard on yourself, like be a little bit more supportive. Yeah.
Be a great boss. Be the
Yeah.
boss that you always wanted. You have
Right.
the power. It's all in your
I
mind.
know, it's really fascinating. I'm like, wow, it's so, like, if I'm not paying attention, I'll be like, I'll default right into bad boss. So I'm like, oh no, we're not doing that. But what was the sort of impetus for, as a writer, having written books, and then adding this offering in to work with other writers, because that's also another different headspace in terms of, you're on the other side now, basically as editor type person, essentially, in some ways. So what was that? Where did that urge or desire come from, or how did that manifest itself originally? And then what is that like, being on both sides of the equation?
Yeah, that's a great question. It started very casually. I started mentoring writers in a writers group, and just because I felt like I, by that stage, maybe 5 years ago or something, I'd published books. I'd had the experience of being in classes, and working with editors, and I knew, and like quite a few different kinds of editors, different kinds of classes, and I knew what I liked and what I didn't like. I've had some amazing teachers, and I've had some experiences which I just felt like, frankly, ripped me off and were like a complete waste of money or just a bad teacher. Um, and so it was, I am a type of person where if I feel like I I can create something good here that is going to be of value, and I like it. I mean, I like teaching. That's, one of the reasons why I do it. I like expressing my ideas. I really love working with story, of any kinds of story. And sometimes that means writing the whole thing and seeing a project through to completion. It's my name on the cover, but I realize it doesn't. I can still be really satisfied, just brainstorming with writers, like coming up with solutions. And I realized as well that I had, a good editor's eye. I can read pages, be it an outline, a first draft, like a messy seventh draft, and I can identify what's not working and where the story wants to be. And that is, I think, from an experience of being a writer for so long, being able to connect to characters, seeing the story and why it's not working on the page, and like being able to communicate that to writers. Um, so then it really just sort of grew from being like, I think the first time I ever taught was probably just like a 2 hour workshop, So just sort of and I used to do them from my apartment. This is like pre-pandemic, pre-kids. I would do like storytelling workshops or a romance workshop from my apartment. People would just come over, and then we would sit around and I would yap away and we'd look at pages. And then, during the pandemic, everyone moved to Zoom teaching, and I realized, oh, this, of course, I love being in a room with people, but like then I could open it up so it wasn't just for New Yorkers. And then by the time I was thinking about my novel year, I was just really thinking, what is not there in the market right now? Like what would writers want? What can I provide? And what will actually get people to finish a book? And
Well, that's what I
and
love about it because it's a whole year. I
yeah,
think is really significant. I know there's a lot of different. I mean, my feed gets very full of all kinds of things about writing this and writing that, but a lot of it's like 5 weeks. I'm like, that's. I mean, no, like, I mean, that's great maybe as a starting point, but I love that you're taking them through a whole year. And that consistency and really building the practice of the writing
that's right.
to really give time and space to the craft of it. So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, most of the writers that I work with in the programs, like people have full-time jobs or they have kids or they have commitments. And that I think that, by giving, what we also do is at the beginning of the program, after, in the draft, you submit an outline, you get a critique, so you have a map. In revision, you get your dev edit straight away. So you have like a full letter to be like looking at how you're going to approach your revision. And then we set a sustainable word count like calendar that takes out holidays, takes out busy work weeks, takes out like whatever you need, and then just like sets up a simple writing, like customized writing plan for every writer that we really stay on top of and check in very regularly to make sure it's creating a sustainable, I keep coming back to that word,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you can what happens is people get bursts of energy, they get excited, they like start strong, they'll write like 10,000 words in a month and then burn out, and or
Mm-hmm.
just be like, I don't know what happens next. And then it's easy to get discouraged. I can't do this. I don't know what this story is. And again, like the war in their head takes over. So just setting up something that writers can like stay with a steady, stable pace that works for them around their own commitments, which gets them to the finish line in a way that doesn't feel like, we're having to wait for bursts of inspiration, or we're moving in a sluggish pace where it just feels like this book will never be done. And
Mm-hmm.
it feels like and from the writers I'm working with now, because the program, is already underway with different cohorts, everyone really appreciates that aspect of it, that there is these constant check-ins where like, you're doing a group session once a month, you're meeting with me once a month. There's always, you're in a Slack group the whole time. So if you have a question, you have a concern, there's a support system, and you're just not doing it all on your own.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's huge. And I really appreciate what you said earlier about, you just love story and that, whether it's a story you're writing or have written or someone else's writing that you can help them write or noodle out a block or help them find a way through or solve a conundrum or a problem or whatever. I just love that it's the love of story that excites you. It doesn't matter who's writing the story. And I love that. I love that so much. It's such a great reminder. Like that's really like, helping more stories be out there is really sounds to me like the driver here versus like it's all about me, which is a really easy trap. I think it certainly is for me. It's very easy for me to be like, but what about me and my story? I'm like, yeah, but who cares? It's like, let's get these as many stories as we can out there. So
Yeah, I think that's really profound and really true. I think that for a lot of artists, it's easy to become myopic because it is your vision and you do need to advocate for yourself. And spending time in getting in touch with what you want to say is important. But it can be a difficult place to live in full time, as all artists probably know. You know, it doesn't really matter if you're successful or not. Like it's sometimes the success just adds more pressure. But just being able to most artists get into the practice because they love it, whether that's music, visual arts, photography, whatever. And if you are kind of feeling like you're struggling, like looking to connect with a group, become a mentor, become a teacher, you don't have to do it full time. I mean, and it can be really invigorating just to be around other practitioners of whether you feel like you're on par with them or you have something to help them with and teach them or support them because it still feels like you're playing in the artistic world, and that you are engaging with the art form. But honestly, sometimes it's also just more fun because it's less pressure. Like I can tell a writer how to restructure their book and they'll be like, great, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed. Like, and
right.
you're going to go to work. Like,
great, I'm done with my day. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Well, and it reminded me of another thing you said earlier in terms of, when we can see someone else doing it, whether they're one step ahead or 10 of where I am today. Like if I can look towards like, oh, that person's doing this thing or did that thing, like it makes it, it helps me to keep doing the thing. And so being that person who's like, hey, I've walked this road, let me come back and help you get further along on a similar road, I think is also hugely important, but also deeply satisfying because it's like, oh, I have something to offer here. Like it's not just, beyond the creative aspect. I have also something tangible to offer to the next person. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Georgia, for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure hearing about all the different ways that you work in the writing universe and storytelling. And I'm really excited to come see Generation Women at Joe's Pub in New York City. So fantastic. I'm gonna work on making it to the 16th, June 16th, book launch.
June 16th. That's
And
right.
Generation Women event all at once. Wonderful.
That's right.
Play It Again coming out on the 16th of June. So in
That's
a couple
right.
of weeks. Woohoo! Very exciting. And yeah, I look forward to it. I'm very excited. And I'll put all the links to all your things and your website in the show notes so people can find your events and find your work and find you. So,
Oh, well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it.
oh, well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon in person.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to The Stories That Sparkle, and thank you again to Georgia for joining me. Wow, what an incredible conversation. I'm just like still buzzing from it, and what a way to kick off Becoming the Proof. Yeah, what a great way to start this 4-part series. OMG. And I think my big takeaway, just re-listening to it yet again, is that when you build the room that you need, or even someone else needs, like your mom, you ensure it exists for every other woman out there who will need it after you. Because being of service to yourself and being of service to others is often the same act. What? Mind blown situation, y'all. Thank you, Georgia, for all that you do to get women's stories out there, to give women a room, a space, a stage, a platform, all the things, and for helping writers write their books. OMG. And so, y'all, if you're in New York City or you want to attend virtually, Joe's Pub is where it's at, Generation Women. And on June 16th, the event will be a combo pack of the book launch for Georgia's latest book, Play It Again, and Generation Women. Wow. So the theme for that night is play, in line with the book. So go check it out online, in person, and of course, pre-order the book, Play It Again. Links to all the things Georgia Clark and all that she does are in the show notes. And so are all the links to all of my things, including my Substack, where you can become a subscriber, hellarader.substack.com. And if you do that, you'll never miss an episode of the Stories That Sparkle podcast, or my Tuesday tidings that go with it, or the next installments of this 4-part series. So check it out, get connected, stay in touch. And of course, if you have a story you want to share, use the link in the show notes to submit, because together we bring light into dark places.